is working good. Hi Rayana, thank you for coming through. Chat is working. Yay. Yes, guys. Hi guys. Hi Zay. Hi Rayana. Hi Arnold. Thanks for coming through. Zay said too. um, so we're just gonna do a recap of the kings of Judah. So we're just focusing on the kings of Judah, because that is the main focus in the major prophets, right? They do refer back to the northern kingdom, but by this time the northern kingdom has been destroyed. So remember, the northern kingdom got destroyed first because of their idolatry, right? And if you remember Jeroboam, Solomon's higher ranking officer, he was upset that Rehoboam didn't want to, you know, take the heavy yoke off them, the heavy burden. Have a good one, you shall not stay. Thank you for coming through, say that's okay. Didn't want to lift the heavy burden of Rehoboam, right? Jeroboam. So then, you know, Jeroboam, you know, got angry and went off to Samaria, and he was king over there, and he made the two calves, right? So we are just going to go over the kings of Judah, because Jeroboam, I think, yes, he was the downfall of Samaria, or the northern kingdom, being destroyed. So now we're focusing on Judah. We're just going to be focusing on the kings of Judah, and specifically the kings that were reigning in the times of the major prophets. Seemed like he had good intentions in the beginning. Yeah, it seemed like, but I think I think over time he got jealous of the house of David. Maybe he got jealous of keep being Solomon's high-ranking officer, and he wanted more. So, you know, he decided to go off and make his own city and have his own rules, right? Because he no longer wanted to be under the house of David. But, you know, that was his downfall, you know. He led the rest of the tribes, you know, the rest of the Israelites into their downfall, you know. So, shame on him. Shame on him. But, yeah. So, we'll begin into soon Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, right? So, this is mainly for, even though there were kings, these kings were ruling in the time of Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, and Jeremiah were sort of in the timeline of each other, right? Even though they were in different locations doing the Lord's work, right? And doing their ministry, they were in different locations still warning other people, right? They had their different roles, and they had their different audience on who they were warning for, right? Isaiah is completely different, because Isaiah was 100+ years before exile, before anything, right? So Isaiah was kind of like predicting like everything, like the world, right, basically. So I always see Isaiah like a little bit of Revelations, because I personally, me, I seem to be going to Revelations and I seem to be going to the history books back and forth when I was in Isaiah. So to me, Isaiah feels like a little bit of like a revelation on humanity as a whole, rather than Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel is urgent. It's like right now, we need to warn people right now of sudden disaster. Why I feel that Isaiah kind of tells like what's going to happen overall in humanity. You know, there's a Messiah coming, there's a new earth, there's a new kingdom, blah, right? So I always put Isaiah separate, because you know he wasn't in that time with Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Daniel. He wasn't. You know, he was way before, and he prophesied things way before their time, right? But nonetheless, there was some kings that were still in his time way before um, as well, which you know it's good to know when we get into the major prophets. So these kings are not in. I haven't put them in no particular order. I've just put them however, you know. So yeah, we're gonna start off with Jehoahaz. So Jehoahaz was a king of Judah, and if you remember in 2 Chronicles, I'm gonna go back from Chronicles to 2 Kings, right? Because remember Chronicles was a little bit in depth, but I feel like when depends what book you go back into, it says a little bit more. So if you remember in 2 Chronicles, it was just talking about the kings of Judah. It wasn't talking about the northern kingdoms, because in Kings it talks about the northern kingdom and it talks about Judah as well. But in 2 Chronicles it just talks about the kings in Judah. So those are the 2 books I'm going to go between. So Jehoahaz, he was king of Judah, right? And he was in Jeremiah and Ezekiel's time, right? Jeremiah and Ezekiel's time. So Jeremiah was before exile, just before exile, during exile. He didn't get to see post exile, right? Ezekiel during exile, and so is Daniel during exile. He got to see a little bit of post exile, but yeah, they were mainly during exile, right? So Jeremiah was before exile and during exile. So he was prophesying before exile, and he was prophesying again during, you know, before the fall of Jerusalem. So yeah, so Jehoahaz was in their time. So I'll just read a little bit of Jehoahaz just to get you like familiar. So Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 3 months. His mother's name was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah. She was from Libnah. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as his predecessors had done. Pharaoh Necho put him in chains at Riblah in the land of Hamath, so that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and he imposed on Judah a levy of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, son of Josiah, king in place of his father Josiah, and changed Eliakim's name to Jehoiakim, right? But he took Jehoahaz and carried him off to Egypt, and there he died. Jehoiakim paid Pharaoh Necho the silver and gold he demanded. In order to do so, he taxed the land and exacted the silver and gold from the people of the land according to their assessments. Right? So Jehoahaz got taken off by Pharaoh, and in his place became Jehoiakim. Jehoiakim is king in place of his father, in place of Josiah. So Jehoiakim. Maybe I should have done Jehoahaz next to Jehoiakim when I was explaining kings. But anyway, so that was Jehoahaz. So he was in Jeremiah and Ezekiel's period of time. when he was reigning, and he wasn't a good king, right? He wasn't a good king. Who have I got that can make a little bit more sense? Okay, let's go to King Hezekiah. So most of us know King Hezekiah, right? King Hezekiah was a good king. He came in and he reformed. He got rid of high places. He got rid of the Baals. He did what the other kings before him could not do, right? Again, now he's in Isaiah and Micah's time. So remember, Isaiah is 100 years plus, about 100 years or so before Jeremiah, before Ezekiel, before Daniel, right? He's before all of that, right? So Hezekiah um, would have been in Isaiah's time, and Isaiah was Hezekiah's advisor. So King Hezekiah would go to Isaiah and ask him for his help, ask him for his counsel, right? So that was his prophet that he would go to. So if we go to let's go to 2 Kings, or should we go to 2 Chronicles? 2 Chronicles 29, like 2. Two Kings 18 to 20. Let's see, what one's better? 2 Kings 18 to 20. Okay, let's go. Sorry, I'm just deciding what one I want to read from. 2 Chronicles 29. Okay, let's go 2 Kings 18, chapters 18 to 20. So this is Hezekiah, king of Judah. In the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, became to reign. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. He removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He broke into pieces the bronze snake Moses had made, for up to that time the Israelites had been burning incense to it. It was called Nehushtan. Hezekiah trusted in the Lord and the God of Israel. There was no one like him among the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. He held fast to the Lord and did not stop following him. He kept the commands the Lord had given Moses, and the Lord was with him. He was successful in whatever he undertook. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him. From watchtower to fortified cities, he defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its territory. In King Hezekiah's 4th year, which was the seventh year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, marched against Samaria and laid siege to it. At the end of 3 years, the Assyrians took it. So Samaria was captured in Hezekiah's 6th year, which was the 9th year of Hosea, king of Israel. The king of Assyria deported Israel to Assyria and settled them in Hala, in Gozan, on the river Harbor, and in the towns of the Medes. This happened because they had not obeyed the Lord their God, but had violated his covenant, all that Moses the servant of the Lord commanded. They neither listened to the commands nor carried them out in the 14th year of King Hezekiah's reign, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. So Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent this message to the king of Assyria at Lachish: I have done wrong, withdraw from me, and I will pay whatever you demand of me. The king of Assyria exacted from Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace. At this time, Hezekiah, king of Judah, stripped off the gold with which he had covered the doors and doorposts of the temple of the Lord and gave it to the king of Assyria. So by this time, the northern kingdom has gone, right? The northern kingdom is getting judgment for what they have done. The king of Assyria sent his supreme commander, his chief officer, and his field commander with a large army from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. They came up to Jerusalem and stopped at the aqueduct of the upper pool on the road to the washerman's field. They called for the king, and Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, the palace administrator, Shebna, the secretary, and Joah, son of Asaph, the recorder, went out to them. The field commander said to them, Tell Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. On what are you basing this confidence of yours? You say you have the counsel and the might for war, but you speak only empty words. On whom you are depending, that you rebel against me. Look, I know you are depending on Egypt, the splintered reed of a staff which pierces the hands of anyone who leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who depend on him. But if you say to me, we are depending on the Lord our God, isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship before this altar in Jerusalem? Come now, make a bargain with my master, the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses if you can put riders on them. How can you repulse one officer of the least of my master's officials, even though you are depending on Egypt for chariots and horsemen? Furthermore, I have come to attack and destroy this place without word from the Lord. The Lord himself told me to march against the country and destroy it. Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, and Shebna and Jonah said to the field commander, Please speak to your servant in Aramaic, since we understand it. Don't speak to us in Hebrew in the hearing of the people on the wall. But the commander replied, Was it only to your master and you that my master sent me to say these things, and not to the people sitting on the wall, who, like you, will have to eat their own excrement and drink their own urine? Then the commander stood and called out in Hebrew, Hear the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. This is what the king says, Do not let Hezekiah deceive you. He cannot deliver you from my hand. Do not let Hezekiah persuade you to trust in the Lord when he says, The Lord will surely deliver us. The city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah. This is what the king of Assyria says, Make peace with me and come out to me, then each of you will eat fruit from your own vine and fig tree and drink water from your own cistern, until I come and take you to a land like your own, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey. Choose life and not death. Don't listen to Hezekiah, for he is misleading you when he says, The Lord deliver us. Has the God of any nation ever delivered his land from the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sisera, Hena, and Aviah? Have they rescued Samaria from my hand? Who of all the gods of these countries have been able to save this land from me? How can the Lord deliver Jerusalem from my hand? But the people remained silent and said nothing in reply, because the king had commanded, Do not answer him. Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, the palace administrator, Shebna, the secretary, and Joah, son of Asaph, the recorder, went to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him what the commander had said. Shall I move on to? So you can see that, you can see so far that the Israelites, they are really in this. Remember, this is way before the Jeremiah comes into place, right? This was still in Isaiah's time, right? So we're in chapter 19. I'm going to go to Isaiah's prophecies, Sennacherib's fall, right? Then Isaiah, son of Amos, sent a message to Hezekiah. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I have heard your prayer concerning Sennacherib, king of Assyria. This is the word that the Lord has spoken against him. So this is Isaiah, right? Virgin daughter Zion despises you and mocks you, daughter Jerusalem. Toss her head as you flee. Who is it you have ridiculed and blasphemed? Against whom have you raised your voice and lifted your eyes in pride? Against the Holy One of Israel. By your messengers you have ridiculed the Lord, and you have said, with my many chariots I have ascended the heights of the mountains, the utmost heights of Lebanon. I have cut down its tallest cedars, the choicest of its junipers. I have reached its remote parts, the finest of its forests. I have dug wells in foreign lands and drank the water there. With the soles of my feet I have dried up the streams of Egypt. Have you not heard long ago? I ordained it in the days of old. I planned it. Now I have brought it to pass that you have turned fortified cities into piles of stone. Their people drained of power are dismayed and put to shame. They are like plants in the field, like tender green shoots, like grass sprouting on the roof, scorched before it grows up. But I know where you are and where you come and go, and how you rage against me. Because you rage against me and because your insolence has reached my ears, I will put my hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth, and I will make you return by the way you came. This will be the sign for you, Hezekiah. This year you will eat what grows by itself, and the second year what springs from that. But in the third year sow and reap, plant vineyards and eat their fruit. Once more, a remnant of the kingdom of Judah will take root below and bear fruit above. For out of Jerusalem will come a remnant, and out of Mount Zion a band of survivors. The seal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Therefore, this is what the Lord says concerning the king of Assyria. He will not enter the city or shoot an arrow here. He will not come before it with shield or build up a siege ramp against it. By the way that he came, he will return. He will not enter the city, declares the Lord. I will defend this city and save it for my sake and for the sake of David my servant. That night the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, broke camp and withdrew. He returned to Nineveh and stayed there. One day while he was worshipping in the temple of his god Nisroch, his son Adrammelech and Jaziah killed him with the sword, and they escaped to the land of Arat. And Esarhaddon, his son, succeeded him as king. Right, so that was Isaiah prophesying about Sennacherib. So Sennacherib was part. Hey Sai, thank you for coming through. Sennacherib was part of the Assyrian army, and as we know it, the Babylonian army was going to take over Judah, right? So God said, no, you Assyrian army are gonna go, because you are not the one to come and cast judgment, right? I haven't sent you here for that. But yeah, so the Assyrian army was taken care of, and Hezekiah was okay for that moment, right? Remember, the exile is still to come, right? Exile is still to come. Even though this is way before, Isaiah prophesied that everything was going to happen as it was going to happen, right? So that was King Hezekiah. So we did Jehoahaz. So Jehoahaz was in Jeremiah and Ezekiel's time. We did Hezekiah, which was in Isaiah, Micah, and Hosea's time. And Isaiah was Hezekiah's advisor. So we just seen that Isaiah prophesied to Hezekiah about the fall of Sennacherib, right? Let's move on to Ahaz. Ahaz was in the time of Isaiah, Hosea, and Michael. So again, this is before Jeremiah. This is before he's prophesying anything about exile. So this is in Isaiah's time, and let's go to 2 Kings 16. Ahaz. 2 Kings 16. Alright, so it says Ahaz, king of Judah. In the 17th year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, Ahaz, son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 16 years. Unlike David his father, he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord his God. He followed the ways of the king of Israel, and even sacrificed his son in the fire, engaging in detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. He offered sacrifices and burnt incense at the high places on the hilltops and under every spreading tree. Then Rezin, king of Amram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, marched up to fight against Jerusalem and besiege Ahaz, but they could not overpower him at that time. Rezin, king of Amram, recovered Eleph for Amram by driving out the people of Judah. Edomites then moved into Eleph. People of Judah, Edomites, then moved into Eleph, and he lived there to this day. Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. I am your servant and vassal. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Amram and of the king of Israel, who are attacking me. And Ahaz took the silver and gold found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace, and sent it as a gift to the king of Assyria. The king of Assyria complied by attacking Damascus and capturing it. He deported its inhabitants to Kir and put Rezin to death. Then King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. He saw an altar in Damascus, and sent to Uriah the priest a sketch of the altar, which detailed plans for its construction. So Uriah the priest built an altar in accordance with all the plans that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus, and finished it before King Ahaz returned. When the king came back from Damascus and saw the altar, he approached it and presented offerings on it. He offered up his burnt offerings and grain offerings, poured out his drink offerings, and splashed the blood of his fellowship offerings against the altar. The bronze altar that stood before the Lord he brought from the front of the temple, from between the new altar and the temple of the Lord, and put it on the north side of the new altar. King Ahaz then gave orders to Uriah the priest. On the large new altar, offer the morning burnt offering and the evening grain offering, the king burnt offering and his grain offering, and the burnt offering of all the people of the land, and their grain offering and their drink offering. Splash against this altar the blood of the burnt offering and sacrifices, but I will use the bronze altar for seeking guidance. And Uriah the priest did just as King Ahaz had ordered. King Ahaz cut off the side panels and removed the basin from the removable stand. He removed the sea from the bronze balls that supported it and set it on a stone base. He took away the Sabbath canopy that had been built at the temple, and removed the royal entrance outside the temple of the Lord in deference to the king of Assyria. As for the other offense of the reign of Ahaz and what he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the king of Judah? Ahaz rested with his ancestors and was buried with them in the city of David, and Hezekiah, his son, succeeded him as king. So Ahaz didn't do good, right? Ahaz didn't do good. So Ahaz was Hezekiah's father, and he was in the time of Isaiah, Hosea, and Micah, right? So you can see why God was starting to get angry with the Israelites, because and the officials as well, right? Because the kings were not doing what some of the kings were not doing what they were supposed to do in Judah, right? Despite the many warnings that they got from some of the prophets in that time. So next we have Uzziah, which is Azariah. So Uzziah, Azariah, it's kind of the same meaning at the time. Uzziah or Azariah was in the times of Isaiah, Amos, Hosea, and it says Jonah, and it says it's that overlapping reign of Job and 2, so it was kind of like in between. So Uzziah or Azariah was in Isaiah, Amos, and Hosea's time. It says here, Azariah, king of Judah, in the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah, son of Azariah, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 52 years. His mother's name was Jechaliah. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Azariah had done. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. The Lord afflicted the king with leprosy until the day he died, and he lived in a separate house. Jotham, the king's son, had charge of the palace and governed the people of the land. As for the other events of Azariah's reign and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Azariah rested with his ancestors and was buried near them in the city of David, and Jotham, his son, succeeded him as king. So that was Azariah or Uriah, and he was a good king, but didn't get rid of the high places. Remember, the high places was actually the problem, the big problem, right? So even though they got rid of the Baals and everything else, they didn't manage to get rid of the high places. Let's go to Jotham. So 2 Kings 15. So Jotham was in Isaiah's time. So he was reigning in Isaiah's time, Micah's time, and Hosea's time. So Jotham, king of Judah, in the 2nd year of Pekahiah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 16 years. His mother's name was Jerusha, daughter of Zadok. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Uzziah had done. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Jotham rebuilt the upper gate of the temple of the Lord. As for the other events of Jotham's reign and what he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the king of Judah? In those days the Lord began to send Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, against Judah. Jotham rested with his ancestors and was buried with them in the city of David, the city of his father, and Ahaz his son succeeded him as king. So that is Jotham. Let's go to... Should we go to... Let's go to Zedekiah. Let's go to Zedekiah. No, that's last. We're going to go to Jehoiakim. So Jehoiakim was in Jeremiah's time, Habakkuk, Daniel's time, and this would have been the time that Ezekiel was taken to Babylon, right? So at the end part of Jehoiakim's reign, Ezekiel was taken into exile. So it would have been in Jehoiakim's reign, right? So Jehoiakim is actually the first wave, right? So that would have been the first wave of exile. Now, at this point, Jerusalem had not been fully destroyed, right? They've just started to exile the people out and basically trying to use them as servants, right? So they've exiled some of the people out. They're starting with some of the higher names, the higher officials, like the priests like Daniel and those kind of names. They're trying to take those people out first, you know. So Jehoiakim was the first wave, right? So that would have been the first wave of exile. So as I said, that would have been in Jeremiah, Habakkuk's time, and Daniel and Ezekiel's time. And if we go to, let's go to 2 Chronicles. So it says here, Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 11 years. He did evil in the eyes of his God. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, attacked him and bound him with bronze shackles to take him to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also took to Babylon articles from the temple of the Lord and put them in his temple there. The other events of Jehoiakim's reign, the detestable things he did, and all that was found against him, are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. And Jehoiakim, his son, succeeded him as king. So again, as I said, now we're moving on to Jehoiakim. So Jehoiakim is his son. Again, in that time would have been Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and by this time Daniel is in captive, right? He's in captivity, and he's already in Babylon. So now it's Jeremiah. So this is before the fall of Jerusalem, right? This is before the fall of Jerusalem. At this point, Jerusalem is still intact, right? But they're just exiling people out, you know, trying to see if they can get to comply, right? So they're exiling people out. So this would have been the second wave where they're taking people out of Jerusalem. So Ezekiel would have been in the second wave. So Daniel is in the first wave. Daniel was the first of the major prophets to be exiled out, and then it would have been Ezekiel, but Jeremiah didn't. He stayed in Jerusalem, right? And he stayed there to warn the people there, right? He didn't get exiled into Babylon. There was only Ezekiel and Daniel, right? So Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 3 months and 10 days. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord in the spring. King Nebuchadnezzar sent for him and brought him to Babylon, together with the articles of value from the temple of the Lord. And he made Jehoiakim's uncle Zedekiah king over Judah and Jerusalem. Right? So Zedekiah, I believe this is like the last king that would have been in their time. So Zedekiah was Jehoiakim's uncle, right? So he was in the time of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Habakkuk. And Zedekiah, king of Judah, Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 11 years. He did evil in the eyes of his God and did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, right? Now Jeremiah was his advisor. Jeremiah was his advisor. So he did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, who spoke the word of the Lord. He also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him take an oath in God's name. He became stiff-necked and hardened his heart and would not turn to the Lord, the God of Israel. Furthermore, all the leaders of the priests and the people became more and more unfaithful, following all the detestable practices of the nations and defiling the temple of the Lord, which he had consecrated in Jerusalem. So now this would have been the third wave, right? So this would have been the final straw, at this point, Daniel is warning the people, the officials, the high ranking people, the kings over there, the warnings that it's going to happen, right? He's over there doing his thing, and Ezekiel is warning the people in Babylon, right? The ones the Israelites that got exiled, he's warning them. And then we've got Jeremiah, he's now warning the people that are left in Jerusalem, he's warning. So, they're all doing their own thing, warning people, right? And the people are still not listening to the prophets, right? So during Zedekiah's time, is when the fall of Jerusalem happened. So can you imagine, they've had the first wave, they had the second wave, and now it's the fall of Jerusalem because they're just refusing to listen to Jeremiah, they're refusing to listen to Ezekiel, they're refusing to listen to Daniel, right? I want to touch on Manasseh quickly because I believe that's when Isaiah would have died between that time. But I also want to touch on him because he really was such an evil king, right? He really sent the Israelites into great sin, right? And that was also taken into account as to why God decided to put them into exile. So let's go to. So Manasseh was King Hezekiah's son, right? So remember, King Hezekiah did good, but Manasseh he was very bad, right? He was very bad, and he left Judah in a bad way. And remember, Josiah tried to come in and fix and reform the Israelites right back after what Manasseh had done. So let's go to Kings 21. Okay, we can leave it. Let's go to in 2 Chronicles chapter 33. So it says, Manasseh, king of Judah. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 55 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, following the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. He rebuilt the high places his father Hezekiah had demolished. He also erected altars to the Baals and made Asherah poles. He bowed down to all the starry hosts and worshipped them. He built altars on the temple of the Lord, of which he had said, my name will remain in Jerusalem forever. In both courts of the temple of the Lord, he built altars to all the starry hosts. He sacrificed his children in the fire in the valley of Ben Hinnom, practiced divination and witchcraft, sought omens, and sorted mediums and spiritualists. He did much evil in the eyes of the Lord, arousing his anger. He took the image he made and put it in God's temple, of which God had said to David and to his son Solomon, in this temple and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. I will not again make the feet of the Israelites leave the land I have assigned to your ancestors, if only they will be careful to do everything that I commanded them concerning all the laws, decrees, and regulations given through Moses. But Manasseh led Judah and the people of Jerusalem astray, so that they did more evil than the nations the Lord had destroyed before the Israelites. The Lord spoke to Manasseh and his people, but they paid no attention. So the Lord brought against them the army commanders of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh prisoner, put a hook in his nose, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. In his distress, he sought the favor of the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his ancestors. And when he prayed to him, the Lord was moved by his entreaty and listened to his plea. So he brought him back to Jerusalem and to his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord is God. Afterwards, he rebuilt the outer walls of the city of David, west of Gihon, spring in the valley, as far as the entrance of the fish gate, and encircling the hill of Ophel. He also made it much higher. He stationed military commanders in the fortified cities in Judah. He got rid of the foreign gods and removed the image from the temple of the Lord, as well as all the altars he had built on the temple hill and in Jerusalem. And he threw them out of the city. There he restored the altar of the Lord and sacrificed fellowship offerings and thank offerings on it, and told Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. The people, however, continued to sacrifice at the high places, but only to the Lord their God. The other events of Manasseh's reign included his prayer to his God, and the words the seer spoke to him in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, is written in the annals of the king of Israel. His prayer and how God was moved by his entreaty, as well as all his sins and unfaithfulness, and the sites where he built high places and set up Asherah poles and idols before he humbled himself. All these are written in the records of the seers. Manasseh rested with his ancestors and was buried in his place, and Amnon, his son, succeeded him as king. Right? So, hey Bruce, thank you for coming through. So Manasseh, in humbled, but Manasseh, God never forgot what Manasseh did, right? He wasn't a very good king. Hi Sheba, thank you for coming through. Even though he at the end humbled himself, which God had to humble him, right? He was doing detestable things, witchcraft, divination, right? Idolatry, um, um, he was just leading the Israelites astray, right? So remember, Manasseh is during, would have been in that time period of Isaiah. I think maybe to the end of Isaiah's ministry, right? Because it's saying that Manasseh was probably likely the one that killed the prophet Isaiah. So remember, Isaiah never saw exile or post-exile, because he was centuries before Jeremiah, right? So I always put Isaiah like on its own, as its own, even it's part of a major prophet. I always put him separate, because like as I said, he was given like revelation vibes. Like he wasn't given urgency, even though it is urgent. He wasn't given like immediate urgency like Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Daniel, but he was given urgency in terms of humanity, like the world as a whole, right? To turn away from your sin and repent, and that's what Isaiah was doing. So that's why I separate them, because they weren't in the same time period, nor did they have the same kings that were reigning in that time. But the kings that were reigning in Isaiah's time were absolutely detestable, right? Some were good, like King Hezekiah, and some were really, really bad, like Manasseh, right? I think I'm sure it was Manasseh as well that closed the temple, so that the Israelites couldn't go in and worship. 2 Kings 21. Go in there and worship God. I'm sure it was him. And then we have Then we have Josiah. Guys, I know it's a lot, right? I know it's a lot. But when we get into the major prophets, some of these names will make sense, right? But again, this is just the kings of Judah. Just the kings of Judah. So then we've got Josiah, right? So Josiah, um, I say that Josiah was like big boss. Like he was the last king of Judah, the last good, like decent king of Judah that really was wanting to go all out and all above to get the Israelites back into place, right? So I say that, obviously we've got King David, we know he's a big boss, right? But Josiah, he really came to reform, right? He really came to turn the Israelites from their way, right? And so Josiah would have been in Jeremiah's time and Zephaniah's time and Nahum's time, right? So Josiah was in reigning during Josiah was reigning during Jeremiah's time. So just wanna says here Josiah reforms, right? So Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 31 years. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and followed the ways of his father David, not turning aside to the right or to the left. In the 8th year of his reign, while he was still young, he began to seek the God of his father David. In the 12th year, he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of high places, Asherah poles, and idols. Under his direction, the altars of the Baals were torn down. He cut to pieces the incense altars that were above them and smashed the Asherah poles and the idols. These he broke to pieces and scattered over the graves of those who had sacrificed to them. He burnt the bones of the priests on the altars, and so he purged Judah and Jerusalem. In the towns of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, as far as Naphtali, and in the same rooms around them. So basically, as far as north, remember, Ephraim and Simeon, as far as Naphtali, right? So basically saying that very far. And in the ruins around them, he tore down the altars and the Asherah poles and crushed the idols to powder and cut to pieces all the incense altars throughout Israel. Then he went back to Jerusalem in the 18th year of Josiah's reign to purify the land and the temple. He sent Shaphan, son of Azaliah, and Messiah, the ruler of the city, with Joah, son of Johaz, the recorder, to repair the temple of the Lord his God. They went to Hilkiah, the high priest, and gave him the money that had been brought into the temple of God, which the Levites, who were the gatekeepers, had collected from the people of Manasseh, Ephraim, and the entire remnant of Israel, and from all the people of Judah and Benjamin, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Then they entrusted it to the men appointed to supervise the work on the Lord's temple. These men paid the workers who repaired and restored the temple. They also gave money to the carpenters and builders to purchase dressed stones and timber of joists and beams for the buildings that the king of Judah had lowered to fall to ruin. The workers labored faithfully over them to direct them, where Jahath and Obadiah, Levites descended from Merari, and Zechariah and Meshullam descended from Kohath. The Levites, who were skilled in playing musical instruments, had charge of the laborers and supervised all workers from job to job. Some of the Levites were secretaries, scribes, and gatekeepers. This is where the law of the book was found. So, again, the law of the book was found in Josiah's reign, right? The law of the book was found. While they were bringing out the money that had been taken into the temple of the Lord, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of the Lord that had been given through Moses. Hilkiah said to Shaphan, the secretary, I have found the book of the law in the temple of the Lord. He gave it to Shaphan. Then Shaphan took the book to the king and reported it. Your officials are doing everything that has committed to them. They have paid out the money that was in the temple of the Lord and have entrusted it to the supervisors and workers. Then Shaphan, the secretary, informed the king, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book, and Shaphan read from it in the presence of the king. When the king heard the words of the law, he tore his robes. He gave these orders to Hilkiah, Ahikam, son of Shaphan, Abdon, son of Micah, Shaphan, the secretary, and Isaiah, the king's attendant. Go and inquire of the Lord for me and for the remnant in Israel and Judah about what is written in this book that has been found. Great is the Lord's anger that poured out on us, because those who have gone before us have not kept the word of the Lord. They have not acted in accordance with all that is written in this book. Hilkiah and those the king had sent with him went to speak to the prophet Huldah, who was the wife of Shalom, son of Tokath, the son of Hasrah, keeper of the wardrobe. She lived in Jerusalem in the new quarter. She said to them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Tell the man who sent you to me, this is what the Lord says. I'm going to bring disaster on this place and its people. All the curses written in the book that has been read in the presence of the king of Judah, because they have forsaken me and burned my incense to other gods and aroused my anger by all their hands they have made. My anger will be poured out on this place and will not be quenched. Tell the king of Judah who sent you to inquire of the Lord, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says concerning the word you heard. Because your heart was responsive and humbled yourself before God when you heard that he spoke against this place and its people, and because you humbled yourself before me and tore your robes and wept in my presence, I have heard you, declares the Lord. Now I will gather you to your ancestors, and you will be buried in peace. Your eyes will not see the disaster I'm going to bring on this place and on those who live here. So Joash, hey Larry, thank you for coming through. Josiah was spared basically, right? Because he humbled himself and he was so sorry about not following God's ways, and God gave him mercy, right? So Josiah escaped the exile. Like he was protected. The king called together all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. He went up to the temple of the Lord with the people of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the priests and the Levites, all the people from the least to the greatest. He read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant, which had been found in the temple of the Lord. The king stood by his pillar and renewed the covenant in the presence of the Lord, to follow the Lord and keep his commands, statutes, and decrees with all his heart and all his soul, and to obey the words of the covenant written in this book. Then he made everyone in Jerusalem and Benjamin pledge themselves to it. The people of Jerusalem did this in accordance with the covenant of God, the God of their ancestors. Josiah removed all the detestable idols from all the territory belonging to the Israelites, and he made all who were present in Israel serve the Lord their God as long as he lived. They did not fail to follow the Lord, the God of their ancestors. So remember, Josiah was the last good king, and after Josiah died, they kind of fell back into their old ways, right? And so during this time, right, 5 years later, after the book was founded, the book of Lord, Jeremiah the prophet had started his ministry, right? He started his ministry, and he started warning the people of Judah to turn from their ways because disaster was coming. So that's where Josiah sat, right? He sat between Jeremiah, Zephaniah, Hodiah, and Hanun during that time. So I think that's all the. I think that's all the. I think that's all the kings. Right. So just to put it into perspective, how long the how long God was warning the Israelites through the prophets, right? Remember the first and second wave of exile, Jerusalem had not been totally destroyed, right? They'd only just been exiled. There's still a few people in Jerusalem, right, where Jeremiah is, um, and it had not the fall of Jerusalem had not taken place yet until the third wave, which is King Zedekiah. So Daniel during exile, right? He was warning the people for 19 years, right? So remember, Daniel was the first one to go. Daniel was the first one to be exiled. Then we have Ezekiel, right, who was warning the people for 7 years, right? And then we have Jeremiah, who was before exile, warning the people for about 22 years, right? So before, and then after he was warning them, which would be a total of 40 years, right? Which would be a total of 40 years of warning the people in Judah and in Jerusalem to turn from their wicked ways. Remember, King Josiah had passed away, right? And some there had been some kings after that weren't really great, right? So I hope that makes sense. I'm not really good on explaining history, right? But I hope it kind of makes some sense and puts in perspective that the major prophets like Ezekiel, Daniel, and Jeremiah had been warning all of them for many years before God got really fed up and said, you know what, I'm going to exile you, and you're going to be in exile for 70 years before I reconsider reconciliation with you and wanting to have you come back, right? So when we get into the major prophets, when I first read it, I thought, I didn't really grasp how bad the Israelites had been, how harsh the punishment was, right? Because it is quite harsh. But when you start reading through the kings of Judah and you start understanding why God had to act the way he did, you see that, the Israelites, they kind of brought it on themselves. They had been warned for many years to stop that idolatry and stop their ways and stop this, and they didn't want to listen to the prophets, they didn't want to listen to God, and they all wanted to kind of like do whatever. Maybe they thought that punishment wasn't coming on their way, and nothing was going to happen. But remember, they had seen the northern kingdom, right, Ephraim, the northern kingdom get destroyed, so that should have been enough for them, right? And you would think that the first wave and the second wave of exile would have been enough for them to turn and repent, but they didn't. They still carried on in their detestable ways until God said, well, the walls of Jerusalem are gonna come down, right? So those are all the kings. Those are all the kings. Those are all the kings. Yeah. Those are all the kings. Sorry, look at my notes. So those are all the kings in Judah, and those were the kings during some of the prophets' time. When we get more near to the prophets, as I said, some of the names will start to make sense, and you might remember, oh, Josiah, I remember him. He was the good king. He was the king that reformed. He found the book of the law, and during that time Jeremiah was starting his ministry, and it will start to piece together and make sense. So that is the end of the recap of the kings of Judah. Wednesday I'll be in the book of Wednesday I'll be in the book of Ecclesiastes, and then we'll be in Song of Songs, and then we'll be in Isaiah. We'll start in Isaiah. And remember, Isaiah is before everything before exile, before post exile. He was centuries before Jeremiah, so he's kind of prophesying like everything, you know. He's prophesying everything. So thank you for those who came. Thank you for those who liked. I really, really appreciate it. I'll see you tomorrow if you can make it. If not, I'll see you when you can make a live. And yeah, bye guys.